Well, hi, this is Custom Works. I'm Clint Allen, and today we're going to be talking about the highly controversial CCV, crankcase ventilation bypass, or the catch can mod. You really want to stick around for this one. Well, thanks for hanging around through that. So today we're talking about the CCV crankcase ventilation unit on your 7.3. Basically, if you're not in the know, we're just not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because this has just been beaten down. But we're going to finally define this and debunk it, all right? Much like the high pressure oil pump oil reserve. All gas and diesel engines all have that final power stroke as the piston comes up and fires, whether it's petrol, gas, diesel, doesn't make a difference. And what happens is you lose some of that power blast in the piston, and that goes back through the bottom of the piston, ends up in the block as a excessive gas, and also with oil mix and some fuel and stuff like that. And what the breather does, CCV, whatever you want to call it, that vents off that excess amount of pressure that is within the engine. If we didn't have this on the engines, we would just blow out seals and it would cause all kinds of other problems. So that being said, we're going to do a couple things here. First off, we're going to take a look at wrong info. Then we're going to show you what I have done. And it's nothing that you've ever seen before. So hang on in there. So let's start with the wrong info first.
About this CCV, this crankcase ventilation thing. You guys are idiots for doing this, okay? It's stupid. In these trucks, in the stock configuration of the truck, your crankcase ventilation comes right here and goes into the air, and turbo actually sucks into the turbo, and it takes the excess smoke and whatnot and takes it through the turbo. Now, you're going to get some oil. It's a diesel.
All right, let's stop right here and let's go over this. The man says, and he's right, that all the gook and the vapor and the oil that comes out of the motor goes into the plastic intake tube, goes down into the turbo. Now you're getting all kinds of odd vapors, corrosive effect, dust that comes from the air filter. I don't care what kind of air filter you have, you're always going to have some of that dust that's going to pass through that air filter, and that's all going to get gummed up inside the turbo, on the turbo wheel, and then it's going to keep on working its way down the pipe, making it less efficient, more problems, building up more heat. So let's see what else he's got to say.
Compressions in diesel and the boost, there's a little bit of oil that goes past the ring. So a lot of you guys out here with this, this fantastic internet wisdom that you got out here, go and put this crankcase ventilation thing, which is the absolute stupidest thing you can do. More than that, what happens is that you never really relieve the crankcase pressure inside the engine. This creates a vacuum because of the turbo in this area. Even though it's a small vacuum, it creates a vacuum and actually sucks this out.
All right, so we're going to stop here. Now, is anybody paying attention to this? If you look inside the tube, whether it's aftermarket or factory, now he says it causes a vacuum and it just sucks it right out of the motor. You heard it firsthand. That's what he said. It's what everybody says. Do you ever notice that the port that the CCV hooks up to is reversed. So as the air is traveling from the air intake to the turbo, it's actually pushing air into the motor. So the motor and all that excess waste that comes as the blow-by has to force itself out while air is forcing itself in. So think about that. Going down the road, 60, 70 miles an hour, you got all that crankcase pressure trying to get out, and air is coming in through the air intake into the turbo, and it's pushing down into the CCV. We're getting closer here to making a point, aren't we? Let's see what else he's got to say.
Now what happens is because you're increasing this this crankcase ventilation, it puts stress on the turbo seals. We've seen turbos come in here leaking, and on the exhaust side, and 9 times out of 10, we take the crankcase ventilation off, we put it back to stock, and oh, oops, look at there, the leak stops. It's freaking amazing. I don't know why that is. I just know that I've seen it over and over and over.
All right, we're stopping again. So here we go. All of a sudden, mystically, because you disconnect the CCV from the air intake, all of a sudden the turbo starts leaking. All kinds of problems. Don't know why it leaks. Don't know why it stops leaking when you hook it back up. Well, it's as simple as this. Basically, when you disconnect it, that turbo is breathing in fresh air. It hasn't seen the ability to spin at the rate that it was previously because it doesn't have back suction with the air forcing it back down into the motor. And some people who experience leaks, well, guess what? You had a worn out turbo to begin with. So let's see what else he's got to say.
You don't need. The only reason anybody does this is because oil ends up in the intercooler, which is no big deal. It's designed to do it. Let the oil...
All right, we're stopping again, and we'll leave this one alone after this. So there you have it. You know, once again, you heard it, and everybody says the same thing, that having the CCV hooked up draws those vapors, draws the oil, draws the crud and all that stuff into your air-to-air. So that means, keeping in mind these trucks are 20, 30 years old, and you know, hang on there, I know the OBSs don't have the air-to-air, but basically you're filling up all these years of crud into that air-to-air. It's working its way through the system. Those boots that hold your tubes on, those are slowly getting wrecked over time and stretched out. If you ever taken apart an old POWERSTROKE that hasn't had the tubes, connectors replaced, you ever notice that they're really, you know, pliable? Well, that's not just because of age, that's because they've been getting hosed down with oil both from the inside of the tube and the exterior, just from the messiness of a diesel motor. But once again, it is said that, oh, it's designed to do it. No, it's not. All that crud and all that vapor and all that icky, crappy, burnt off items that are sitting in your system, sitting in that air-to-air, over all this time has filled it up. You know, just take some water on your hose and spray it on something and throw a little dust on there. What does it do? It sticks. Imagine what it's doing inside your motor, inside the air-to-air. Well, once that oil gets in there, and once again, I don't care what type of air filter that you use, there's always going to be some of that small items that get through that filter and work its way into that air-to-air and works its way into the motor, and that gets everything gunked up in there. So this is not a good idea. So let's hit down on some facts. We're debunking this right now. The only reason why the 7.3 has this CCV is all because of emissions, because of the government. The government required that trucks of that year to start having this CCV going back in, so vapors and oil and stuff like that does not end up into the atmosphere. Amazingly though, fact, the international T44E, all vents out into the atmosphere. Surprise! Point being is that this individual is saying that these motors are not designed to have the CCV disconnected. False. Wrong answer. Everything else that IH puts out, except in a different name, it's the same motor, same everything. There's some mild changes up on front depending if there's a compressor or stuff like that. But everything in their medium duty trucks were all vented out to the atmosphere. Why? Because the EPA didn't crack down on medium duty and semis at that point in time yet. Bulldozers vented out to the atmosphere. Tractors vented out to the atmosphere. Getting back to the 7.3, no matter if it's the IH version in their medium duties and their school buses or in your truck, these things are not designed to have a CCV leading those items back into the truck air system. So there you go. There's no way that you can defute this information. So anyways, let's get on to the fact that what have I done on my truck? And what you'll see in the background here is the normal, where on the driver's side, I took the CCV connector that goes on to the valve cover. I just simply turned it around. I got the hose leading off that goes down underneath the truck, and that goes to a catch can, and then it just vents off to the atmosphere. But we took her to the next level. In the background you'll see we also put one on the passenger side valve cover, and that also vents down to a catch can and then vents off to the atmosphere. The complaints that I've heard about, oh, you get the smell and the underside of your vehicle gets covered with oil, don't have that problem. Matter of fact, since I've done this to all of our trucks, we've stopped having problems burning oil. We've stopped having problems with seals. We've stopped having all kinds of normal runnability issue problems simply by having a CCV that leads off underneath the truck on both valve covers. So I hope you've learned something today, and you take it easy and you have a good day.